Welcome to the Digital Marketing Mentor. I'm your host, Danny Gavin, and together with industry leaders and marketing experts, we'll explore the meeting point of mentorship and marketing. We'll discover how these connections have affected careers, marketing strategies, and lives. Now get ready to get human. Hello, everyone. I'm Danny Gavin, founder of Optage Marketing Professor and the host of the Digital Marketing Mentor. Today, we have a very special guest, Sophie Fell, who's Director of Paid Media for Two Trees PPC. Two Trees PPC is a California-based online advertising agency specializing in increasing profit and revenue through expertly crafted PPC, streaming TV ads, and paid social campaigns. Sophie brings nearly a decade of experience in PPC and social media ads, having managed impressive budgets exceeding $200 million. Her expertise spans various businesses from small solo ventures to internationally renowned brands like LinkedIn, Juicy Couture, Fila, and National Trust. In addition to being a very hands-on director of paid media, Sophie has authored 2 books and dozens of blogs on the subject. She's also recently spoken at Brighton SEO. And today we're going to talk about mentorship and about the world of PPC. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
Me too. And it was a happen chance to meet you on LinkedIn. And I'm so glad that we were able to do that. I bought your book and I'm like, okay, now I need to have Sophie on the...
You bought the book?
I did.
Oh, I love that. Thank you.
Yeah, and I was like, we had to have Sophie on the pod. So we're so glad you're here.
Oh, thank you so much. Oh, I can't believe you bought the book. Oh, that's a lot of effort. That's a lot of effort that you went to. I appreciate it.
to go onto Amazon and click that link, it's difficult. So typically we start off the conversation like where you went to school, what you studied. But I know, Sophie, you didn't get a degree. But let's talk about that. Why didn't you go to university? And then obviously let's talk about, so how did you get into marketing?
I have a bit of a funny story about why I didn't go to uni. So I always planned to, since I was like 7 years old. That was a part of my path. And I actually fell pregnant. So I have an 11-year-old now. This is so long ago. So I got pregnant instead of going to university. That's always what I say. That was my path. And then it meant that I then kind of used that time to get into marketing. You know, after maternity leave, I started a sales job. And then basically I started working at a startup company, and they said, hey, you're the youngest person here. You can work Facebook, right? And I was like, sure, I can work Facebook. And that was it. That was the moment. So now it's been, like you said, nearly a decade in marketing. And yeah, all started off with just doing some Facebook posts. Nearly 10 years ago now.
Wow. And that's so inspiring because I run a digital fundamentals course and we have a special cohort just for women. And like you are like the poster child where like you have a kid, you may not know everything, but like you're willing to like say, hey, I'm going to jump in and do it. Mm-hmm. And both those things, you know, were sort of like the rocket pad or the launch pad to get where you're at today. So I love that. That's like, I could have paid you to say that, but I didn't. You just said it. Which is so cool.
Yeah, it's funny. I actually get asked a lot like, oh, what's your degree? Or what did you go to college or uni for? But yeah, didn't do it. But just put in the time in marketing instead. So, and it worked out. For me personally, it worked out. So it's great.
So I know you did a digital marketing strategy certification course at a university. Love to get your experience or perspective on kind of formalized marketing education versus, YouTube and just doing it.
I will say with every super formalized one I've done, I have always found it very broad, which is great. And I think that's what it's for, right? Not kind of necessarily the deep dive or the day-to-day how-to, but more the theory. So I think it's good to have. I don't think it's the be-all and end-all, honestly. I think having that foundation knowledge, again, always super helpful, those fundamentals and the theory behind it. I think that makes you better at the day-to-day. But in terms of kind of, whether it's going into the platforms or adding a negative keyword or, bidding strategies and things like that, user-created ones like things on Udemy, YouTube, those tutorials, things like that are normally your best bet. So I would say fundamentals and that structured training, definitely important. But in terms of the day-to-day, I personally find like YouTube and Reddit a bit more helpful.
And following people like you.
Well, I was going to say, but I'm reading my book. And
When you look back at like that initial job where you were working Facebook, any like specific early events that happened that you maybe paved your path to actually go in this full time and, create a career out of it?
Do you know what? Very early on, I fell in love with the analytics side of it. I think it's one thing crafting great posts and all that kind of thing, but we actually managed to grow the following from, I think it was 6,000 to 50,000 in about 4 or 5 months. That was my first big achievement. I, exceeded what we thought, we'd ever achieve. It was just a very small startup with a few of us in a barn in the middle of nowhere. So that was really great. And that for me, and seeing the analytics and those audience insights, those were the things that really clicked. And then, like I said, that was it. From there, that was, doing some posts on Facebook, and then that was it. Just absolutely fell in love with digital marketing.
So Sophie, how would you define a mentor?
Sometimes when we talk about mentoring in general, we tend to think of it as this person that's up here kind of talking down to you, and that support. But I think a two-way collaboration is always really helpful. So I think someone that can empathize with you, maybe they have been where you are before, or maybe it's even a peer. I think somewhere where there's that trust and confidence and mutual respect, I think are the really key things to making mentoring work. So I think a mentor can be anyone, right? It can be your family, it can be your friends, so I don't think it necessarily has to be that structured, someone that's, years ahead of you in their career. I think sometimes a mentor can be, again, a trusted friend, a trusted sounding board for sure.
So let's talk about some of your most influential mentors. So you've mentioned in the past Kevin Ashley, who I believe was one of your first bosses. Let's talk about him.
He was. Oh, Kevin, I love him. I did this role where I was doing Facebook ads, moved into kind of Google ads, Google Analytics, digital marketing in general. That was my first role. I made it to marketing manager, and then I left and went in-house as a marketing manager. And that was an extraordinary leap. Like, looking back at it now, I'm like, I don't know how I got that job. I don't know how I got away with it. And Kevin was my boss there. He was the COO. Sometimes you just meet someone and you click, right? I mean, there's like a 40-year age gap between us. We're just maybe 30. Oh, Kevin, if you're watching this, maybe it's 30 years. I'm so sorry. But we just clicked, and he was someone that I could be very honest with about, what I was struggling with, both in my work and, even outside of work. I think he was someone, we had shared goals across our departments, so we kind of naturally collaborated on those things. And he was someone that you could have a very, again, open and honest discussion with. And I think that was when I first learned, and I was 22, 23. That was when I first learned you can have a boss that does respect you. It doesn't have to be this, again, hierarchical. I'm not sure how you say that word now. There doesn't have to be a hierarchy between the two of you. You can have, again, that mutual respect, that balance, and figure out the pros and cons of each of you and how you work together really well. So I think having that sort of relationship really changed a lot of things for me, actually. Again, my expectations of a mentor, a boss, he set the standard very high. And someone that you can truly collaborate with. And he's someone, so that was 7 years ago now that I had that job, and we still speak all the time. Any kind of issues I have, or any, just chatting about life, and we still catch up about life and work. So he was a big transformation in a lot of ways, meeting Kevin,
So tell me about that discussion. One day you walk into his office and say, hey, I want to become a freelancer. How did that conversation go?
So he knew that I was already kind of freelancing on the side. He was aware, again, he was very aware of what was going on in my life. So I don't think he was shocked. I think he was disappointed that I was leaving, but also was saw another opportunity. It was okay, this chapter's closing, but what else can we do? So I actually continued working with him on a freelance basis for a little while afterwards. So he was my first client. We worked together for another year, another 18 months after that. And then once every few months, I'd go in and give him a hand with his brand and stuff as well. He took it pretty well, and he was a former freelancer too. So he, gave me ideas on day rates and how I could put myself out there and that as well, and gave me referrals and things like that too. So although the initial conversation I was dreading, again, it worked out well in the end.
So turning the tables, who do you mentor in your current position?
So I have Samuel, who is our media buyer. So he's who I mentor day to day, every day. He gets to put up with me. And then I have 2 other mentees who I volunteer mentor outside of work, Hannah and Meg. They're both young women in marketing, and I absolutely love speaking to them. It's the highlight of my day. So 3 mentees right now.
Yeah, that's awesome. Some people don't even have one. So that's great.
I'm hoarding them all. That's
yeah,
why.
basically. So what are your keys to mentoring success? And maybe it might be different between Samuel and the ladies, but what would you say are your keys to being a good mentor and mentoring them?
For me, I always try and start with their goals. Normally, when someone seeking out mentorship, particularly someone that you don't work with, there's something, right? There's something they're not ready for, or they are ready for, but it's not happening, or there's just always one or 2 things that they want to kind of work through. So I think for me, it's identifying, why do you think you need help? Or why do what is that missing link for you? And then kind of plotting out their goals and their path, where they would like to be, what this new thing is that they want to do. Maybe they're not quite ready yet. And then identifying the steps to get there. So I think for me, that what is your goal? What are you trying to achieve is the main thing. And it's how I normally get to the root cause of whatever it is that's going on. I try my best to, again, foster that collaborative, mutual relationship too. So I will be very honest too. I will say, I messed this up, or this happened, or this is what's going on for me too. Because again, I think it's really important that you're on the same level. You're not, I don't want to be put on a pedestal, right? I would like us to have, again, those transparent, honest, open conversations. So I think those are the 2 main things. That's identifying their goals and what they're trying to achieve, but also creating, a friendship ultimately, so they feel like they can be honest.
So let's talk about your book a little bit. What sparked your interest in writing a book about PPC?
It literally came about because I'd written so many blogs at this point that I was like, I could turn this into a book. And that is how it all began. So it was literally, I had a massive Google Drive folder full of everything I'd spoken about Google Ads for the last however many years, maybe 4 or 5 years, consistently writing about this. And I thought, I think I can turn this into a book. So that was honestly it. Looking at a folder in my Google Drive and saying, I think I already have the content for this. Let's shape it. Let's mold it. Let's update it. Let's see if we can create a book.
Love it. So even though this is not a podcast about content marketing, but it just shows you that if you've got content, you repurpose it. And this is a perfect example.
Yeah, absolutely.
So for those who haven't read it yet, what are some of the key takeaways or what they can see if they read?
It's kind of for a relatively broad audience. So people that are new to PPC, maybe experts in digital marketing, but want to take a bit of a deeper dive into what's possible and what you can do. There are a lot of small business owners that have bought it and read it, which is great. Really nice to hear their feedback too. Someone that wears all the hats in their organization to Google Ads in particular is so accessible that it feels easy to do, but there are so many tips, tricks, best practices, worst practices, even if you need to follow to make it work. So I think that's the overall aim, is to kind of hand the power back to whoever this person is who's reading the book, to really have confidence in what they're creating and also be able to manage and optimize effectively too. So those are the main takeaways, is just really how to manage your account in the best possible way, and how to create ideally the best performing campaigns for you and your brand.
That's awesome. You kind of sparked an idea or a thought. When you speak to a client and they're not sure what they want to do, and you're like, oh, we think PPC is good for you. Like, I tried it already. It didn't work.
Yes. Yeah. I still have that conversation so often. In fact,
all the time.
Our biggest case study that we just had was because I begged a CMO to let me do Google Ads for them. We were already doing their meta ads and things on TikTok and LinkedIn. And they were like, no, we've run Google search for years. It just doesn't work for us. Like, we know it doesn't work for us. And we generated millions for them from Google search. It worked. But that's the thing. I think even today, in 2024, 2025, people have so many misconceptions. They still don't trust Google search, and it's the job of people like me to convince them and show them that it works.
Moving into building a career in PPC.
Mhm.
What skills are most important to develop for someone starting a career or without PPC experience?
I mean, it's one thing be able to manage the UI and physically create campaigns and things like that. That's one thing, right? But I do think the analysis side and the number side of it is so important. And I think it gets overlooked so much, right? Like data-driven decision making shouldn't be a buzzword, right? We should
Right.
always be making decisions based on data, and that optimization piece gets overlooked so often. A natural love for the data and seeing nice green graphs everywhere, that helps for sure. Realistically, anyone can learn the UI. I mean, how many UIs have you experienced in the last 10 years, 20
A
years,
lot.
A
Yeah.
lot. We're learning all the time, right? How to navigate. So I think that side of things and the campaign creation, Google have got that down, right? That's easy. But I think the data analysis bit is such a huge part of making campaigns successful, both in the short term and the long term, that bit's a really critical piece that I think really separates kind of beginners from people that are really taking it seriously.
In your experience, do you feel like that's something you can learn, or do you kind of have to have a natural knack for it? Because it is, it's kind of hard always to put out a rule book, a guidebook. Hey, in order to optimize, you have to do this or this, right? It's difficult because sometimes you kind of have to look at it, and with the experience, it tells you, right, what needs to be done.
Yeah.
What's your thought on that?
I think it's a learned skill that you can have with time. It just comes with time and experience, right? Like maybe you or I can look at an account and look at one metric and go, cool, I know what's happened. Like I know what's going on. I can understand this. There are so many metrics to consider. And then you also have to have your own personal memory bank of this metric's important on this account and this metric's important on this account. And, so I do think it can be learned. I think the most crucial thing is experience and experiencing the impact that your changes have on the metrics and having to explain how the changes you've made impact those metrics too. I think that experience really, really takes you far.
A previous guest, Corey Henke, recently posted, and I know he speaks about this in general, but about how important it is for a media buyer to know multiple platforms and to understand the whole funnel. On the other hand, we know there's people out there who are like specialists when it comes to Google Ads and know exactly, and they don't talk about anything else. How important is gaining experience across different media platforms, advertising platforms like Google, Microsoft, Meta, TikTok? How important is that?
I'm going to go with the typical answer of it depends.
It's okay.
Because it really does.
I think that's important because it means that both are true, but tell us why.
Yeah, absolutely. It depends, right? I mean, if you're like a T-shaped marketer, you don't need to know absolutely everything, right? You need to know how it all works, what kind of audiences are available and things like that. But you're also concentrating on, SEO, websites, brand, all these other things over here, PR. So I think both are right. Again, it depends what you want to do. If you want to become, so for example, I'm the director of paid media, so I need to know what all of them do, right? But if I was director of PPC, I would just need to know Google and Microsoft and maybe Yahoo and Naver and all those ones too. So it really does depend what you want to do and where you kind of see your future career. I would say you don't have to become a specialist yet, becoming a T-shaped marketer is brilliant. You can do all the things, Yeah, it really depends on your ambitions and goals. And also what your clients or, if you're at an agency or the brand you work for, what they want too, right? If they only want you to do LinkedIn ads and that's the only thing that's ever worked for them, then there's no point you knowing the ins and outs of Google if you're not going to use it, So yeah, it really just does depend on where you are in your career, where you want to be in the future, and I guess again the requirements of the business that you're working for.
So you mentioned T-shaped marketer. That's a phrase that I use often, and I realize I don't think we've explained what that is on the podcast. So I'm just going to take 30 seconds just in case for those people who don't know what it is. But the reason why it's called a T-shaped marketer is because a lot of marketers at the top of the T, right? They have a good understanding of every part of marketing, whether it's SEO, like you said, brand, PR. But most people find a love in one or two areas, and in there, that's where they go deep. So for example, in SEO, like if I really love it, I'm going to know technical SEO and content and link building and all that. So sometimes there's that pressure of like, oh, in marketing, I have to be an expert of everything. And the answer is no, you don't, because most are T-shaped, where it's good to have a foundation and everything, but practically you're going to be an expert in maybe only one or two, and those are the areas where you're going to get deep into.
That was a great explanation. For anyone that's listening, that was perfect.
Thanks, Sophie. So how do you handle the pressure of managing large PPC budgets? And what advice would you give to someone new to managing significant spend? And before I let you answer that, it's kind of interesting for people who don't know, but it's kind of like in order to manage a large budget, you kind of like someone's going to say, have you managed one before? Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, how do you get that first one? And it seems overwhelming. I'd love to talk about that.
So I always give everyone I've worked with the same advice when they're leaping from maybe, $5,000 a month or $1,000 a month even to $100,000 a month or $20,000 a month, whatever that leap looks like. The fundamentals are still the same. And I kind of tell them to ignore the budget, right? Because I think it's so easy to get sucked into the budget and budget-related metrics. And you can really focus on that. But the core fundamentals are still the same, right? You still want a good CTR. You still want a good conversion rate. So that's always the advice I've given over the years. It feels overwhelming, but the fundamental concepts are the same. You should manage it in the same way. If anything, managing lower budgets is harder. It's much harder, much more work, much more optimization needed than with large budgets. So I would try to, my advice is just ignore the budgets where possible and try and stick to those fundamentals that you know so well.
And what about convincing someone that I know PPC and the fact that I'm going to manage maybe a budget that's 6 times more than I'm used to? How do they sell themselves on that?
Again, I think we're talking about this more in paid media and PPC at the moment, which I think is a really good thing. And I think if you can make an account work with a minuscule budget, that is so much more impressive than have been given, $1 million a year and figuring that out. And I think people in the community and the wider community are starting to realize that a bit more too. It's easy. If you've got conversion tracking set up and you've got hundreds of thousands of dollars every month, that's, it's easy. Not simple, you're not, guaranteed to get results, but that's easy to do because Google does the hard work for you. If you are managing consistently small budgets and you have those case studies where you've generated ROAS, you've generated a return, I think that can go a really long way in convincing or reassuring someone that you know what you're doing, because you have to have that attention to detail and you have to be so much more on the ball with those small budgets. So yeah, if anything, I think it takes more skill to manage lower budgets for sure.
So moving up funnel a bit, why do many brands fail with their top of funnel paid search campaigns? And what is the common misconception about these campaigns?
I have been harping on about this a lot in 2024, so I'm excited to have the opportunity to talk about it again. I think one of the main things we've seen, again, over the last 5 to 10 years is that because we've always been so fixated and we've always used last click attribution, top of funnel and middle of funnel campaigns always look like they don't work, right? They will always appear to not work. And, a lot of brands haven't got kind of cross-channel measurement right yet. And I think, you could have a massive TV campaign running and then your bottom of funnel Google ads are going to look great. But any time in my experience that I've tried doing this too, it has been so hard to justify the ROI and the return on creating top and middle funnel ads. So I think that we think it doesn't work, and that's why we shy away from it so much at the moment. And I think where we get it wrong is that we still focus on those lower funnel actions. So we try and use top of funnel and middle of funnel search to drive conversions, and then very quickly it doesn't work, right? We see that it doesn't work. That misconception and that concentrating on the wrong metric and not concentrating on, viewability and engagement metrics has really made us suffer. Whereas we never have a problem with this on Meta or any other platform, right? If we create a brand awareness campaign, we are looking at awareness metrics. And on Google Ads and PPC, we don't seem to do that. We don't seem to carry that across. So that, I would say, is the biggest misconception, that Google Ads doesn't work for top of funnel and middle funnel. And I think by redefining what metrics and KPIs we want for success, I think we can very quickly show that you can drive those objectives through Google Ads for sure.
And this might be getting into the weeds a bit, but in the end of the day, if let's say you have 3 campaigns, top, middle, bottom, and top and middle from a conversion perspective aren't doing great, right? But let's say all the other metrics are really good, engagement, and we're optimizing on what's actually driving people to the site and things like that. We're getting conversions in the bottom. Do we say that top and middle are just a cost to doing business, or technically do we have to look at the whole account and say we need to have positive ROI overall, or if not, then we got a problem? So how do you kind of look at that?
The way I try to look at it, wherever this data is available, whether it's through, Campaign Manager or, whatever it is, I think trying to demonstrate the impact of the top of funnel and middle funnel campaigns on the lower funnel campaigns is the biggest thing to do, right? So if we can successfully show the data and say, look, we got 2 clicks or we got 2 views on this, and then this assisted this conversion all the way down here, I think we can kind of mash together a bit of an ROI for top of funnel and mid funnel. And I think ultimately, when I've been with agencies and at agencies now, that's what businesses are looking for, right? So I think there is some work we can do in terms of the full funnel attribution and what the attribution model looks like. When we can do that, we seem to be able to show that top of funnel and mid funnel campaigns are actually very successful at driving those objectives.
Yeah, that's great. Thank you. So what would you say are some of the red flags when managing Google Ad accounts?
We'll start with the main one, which is, and this is always the first place I look, is the click-through rate. That's always the first place I check. So on, again, in 2024, the latest data is kind of saying on Google in particular, we're looking at 4 to 6%. Used to be 3%. It's increasing over time with Performance Max and everything else that's coming in, and there's all sorts going on. So I normally start there because I think that's such an indicative metric of so many things. If the click-through rate's good, then I can start looking in other places. If the click-through rate's bad, that's normally the root of the problem, right? So we're looking at, how closely themed the keywords, the ad copy, the landing pages are, how great the landing page experience is, all those sorts of things. And I think that metric is so crucial to success on Google Ads. I think a low click-through rate is, always the first place I look if I'm auditing an account. So definitely the first red flag. The second red flag would be I always check campaign settings next, because the amount of times I have seen the default settings applied to location and language and thousands of, or if not hundreds of thousands of dollars wasted by targeting all languages when your ad copy is in English, or targeting absolutely everyone in an area or people interested in an area that maybe don't live there. So those are the second red flags, those default campaign settings and the ones that don't auto-optimize your and show your best performing ads more often as well. Those 3 things are so easy to fix as well. So big red flags if those are wrong, but luckily very easy fixes. And you will, see the analytics change overnight once those changes are made. And I think the third one comes down to conversion tracking, honestly. Obviously, if you don't have any conversion tracking, that's a red flag, but we'll move past that. But I think the best practices for conversion tracking have evolved so much in the last, 2, 3, 5 years, that what was great in a setup a few years ago now no longer works, right? Or isn't the best practices anymore. So when I'm looking at conversion tracking, I want to see regular conversions coming through, of course, and it's all working perfectly, but I want to see those primary conversions set, and I want to see some secondary conversions set. Those are kind of the main things I'm really looking for. So I'm expecting to see multiple conversion types, ideally some conversion values if we have them, but then those primary and secondary ones and those set at the campaign level too. So those would be my 3 biggest red flags for a Google Ads account.
How do you feel about having multiple primary conversions?
I think it's okay to have multiple primary conversions. I'm okay with that. I don't hate that. It's just that if you've got like YouTube subscriptions as your primary conversion and you're also trying to generate leads, you may come into some issues there. But multiple primary conversions is fine by me.
Yeah, or page views, right? That's not really a great primary conversion.
Yeah, no, not that either, no.
Any opinion on going straight away to automated bidding or starting off with manual? Where do you stand on the matter right now?
Oh, God, this is controversial.
I know.
Oh, my goodness. You're going to get me in trouble on the internet.
Nah.
So for me, I will always start with maximize clicks before going to fully automated conversion or conversion value tracking. I think it's out of habit, honestly, and it's something that's always worked for me. That is where I tend to go. I am not a fan of manual CPC bidding or manual CPC caps. I don't think, personally, in my experience, I don't think you need them anymore with how far smart bidding and the algorithms have come along in the last few years in particular. I don't think you need them unless, there's a legitimate reason. So for me, I'm all aboard with automated bidding for sure.
I think that's a very healthy middle ground, right? Because not manual CPC, not auto, but max clicks. I like that. I think that's safe.
It's safe. Again, it's worked for me. I know, other people will go one way or the other, but I'm a little bit on the fence with this one.
Love it. With AI coming down the line and AI overviews, any fear that the industry that we're in right now, it's not going to be here in a couple of years?
It's tricky. I think it will be here. I just think our day-to-day jobs are going to look a little bit different. And I think that as marketers, as people in paid media, as people in PPC, I think we just need to really start focusing on the data. I can see our roles evolving from that, manual input piece to almost again like that black box, like how Performance Max kind of started off a couple of years ago, or a few years ago now. So, the manual inputs are limited. I do think we'll see PPC and SEO start to align a lot more. I can imagine ad content coming just from the website from now on, from now on in the future. So I hope to see PPC and SEO teams work much more closely together on that in the future.
I love that. I haven't thought about that, but I'm gonna expound on it because I'm actually excited about that. So what we're saying is that where ads are going to come from are from the content on the site itself. So having good content on the website is not just about showing up in organic Google, but it's also feeding, it's feeding the paid side as well. I love that. I haven't thought about that. So thank you for giving me that idea. I like it.
It's what I'm thinking. Because I can imagine, again, like completely original ads for absolutely everyone, right? Hyper personalized, but again, with your website content being the basis of all of that. I don't know if that's going to happen, but that's kind of what I'd like to see at some point. And I do think, again, it's going to be more about steering the data, right? Inputting the right data, getting the right first-party data, third-party data, whatever it is we need to really steer those results. So I think our jobs as we know it today will change. I'm hoping they won't be obsolete in the next decade, maybe in 20, 30 years, maybe they will be. I think there'll always be something. But yeah, I can see that kind of evolution coming for sure.
All right, it's time for our lightning round. I believe you're a little bit of a traveler. Would love to know, what are the top 3 places that you visited?
So my favorite place has been Bali. I just loved it. I went there for a yoga retreat. It's very, very hippie of me, quite a few years ago. But I went for 3 days. I traveled all the way for 3 days, and I've just always wanted to go back. So I think that was my number 1. Hong Kong was probably my second. Just being in a completely different environment. I just absolutely loved it. I just loved the culture, the environment. I spent about a week there, and again, would love to go back. And my third one, so I'm obviously British, so it's anywhere in Europe. I'm always, generally quite happy. Anywhere warm in Europe, so Spain, Portugal, places like that. I feel pretty at home there. So those would be my top 3.
And related to travel, what actually brought you to California?
So this is really awkward. So I'm not actually in California. So the company is. But I'm in the UK.
Okay. I was wondering, what's someone from the UK doing in California?
I know. So my boss is from the UK and lives in California. So I'm in the UK, but I just work remotely with them. So
I love it. No. That makes a lot of sense. No, I'm very pro remote, and it's lovely to see. Even California is 3-4 hours behind New York. So it's cool that they're willing to work with someone in the UK. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah, we have a nice crossover. We have 4 hours in the morning when we cross over, which is why it's so dark here right now. We've got fireworks going on. So,
any difficulty between pound dollar type of conversion? I would say from a PPC perspective, I don't know.
No, so all our clients right now are based in California, so that's pretty straightforward. We don't have the DST issue that we have in Europe, where you have to tack on another I think it's 3.5%, 2.5%.
Yeah.
You guys don't have that out there. So that's nice as well. It's nice for clients too. You should not have to pay that. Other than that, no, nothing so far, but I'm touching wood.
Sophie, what's your next big project?
Oh, goodness. Well, we are hoping to really expand Two Trees out into the UK market, which is really, really exciting. So it's what we've spent the last few months kind of planning, plotting, scheming towards. So our owner, Mike, is from the UK and his whole family are here, and he has his fiance in California, and they'd quite like to, come back and forth and stuff. So I think that's our big focus for 2025, honestly, is expansion. Yeah, that's the main thing we're working on right now, which is really, really exciting.
So where can listeners learn more about you and your business?
So they can come to twotreesppc.com to find more about us. You will probably find me on LinkedIn, Sophie Fell, and then I have links to, everywhere else that you need to find me. But LinkedIn's the main place where you'll find me talking about paid media and other nonsense. So definitely come over and say hi.
And definitely check out Sophie's book, The Ultimate Beginner's Guide to PPC. Don't forget about that one as well.
Yeah, I have to plug the book too.
Totally. Well, Sophie, thank you so much for being a guest on the Digital Marketing Mentor. And thank you, listeners, for tuning into the Digital Marketing Mentor. We'll speak with you next time. Thank you for listening to the Digital Marketing Mentor podcast. Be sure to check us out online at thedmmentor.com and at the DM Mentor on Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts for more marketing mentor magic. See you next time.